Two empires, one sea, no room for both. Carthage. On the northern coast of Africa, where Tunisia sits today, roughly 500 miles south of Rome across the water, there was a city called Carthage. The sea air carried salt and tar and the sharp smell of a harbor that never sleeps. Ships moved in and out of its vast circular port at all hours. Timber, silver, grain, soldiers, in one direction or the other, always. It did not start as an empire. It started as a harbor. Around 800 BC, more than 5 centuries before Hannibal was born, Phoenician sailors from what is now Lebanon crossed the Mediterranean and built a settlement on a low peninsula jutting into the sea. They called it Carthage, New City. That settlement became Carthage. The Phoenicians were traders, not soldiers. They wanted what they always wanted: a safe place to anchor, fresh water, and access to routes that moved goods from one end of the ancient world to the other. Who were the Phoenicians? They came from a narrow strip of coastline in what is now Lebanon and Syria, the same coast where Beirut and Sidon stand today. They were the greatest sailors of the ancient world, centuries ahead of everyone else at navigating open water and building ships that could survive it. They invented an alphabet that passed through the Greeks and Romans and eventually became the one you are reading right now. Every letter on this page traces back to those Phoenician sailors. Over 5 centuries, the Phoenicians who settled in North Africa became a distinct people. They kept the language, the gods, and the trading instincts of their ancestors, but they built something larger than any Phoenician city back home. They became the Carthaginians, named for the city they had grown. Hannibal was not a Phoenician, he was a Carthaginian, but his family's roots, his language, his gods, and even his name all stretched back to that coastal strip in what is now Lebanon. His name in the old language, Hannibal, means grace of Baal. Baal was one of the gods his ancestors had worshipped for 1,000 years. The name Carthage is simply the Latin version of Carthage, New City. That name tells you everything about how Carthage thought. When it needed something, silver, copper, a deep water harbor, control of a sea route, it built a new city near it. Carthage planted copies of itself across the western Mediterranean the way a general plants forts. Each one was a base, a market, and a claim. By the time Hannibal's father Hamilcar was born, Carthage controlled the sea lanes of the entire western Mediterranean. That meant it controlled the money. Warship crews need to be fed. Armies need to be paid. Everything Rome wanted to do in the western Mediterranean had to go past Carthage first. Then Carthage found Spain. The city now called Cartagena in Spain was one of their copies, another Carthage, built exactly like the first, a new city, a new Carthage. The silver mines near Cartagena were the richest in the known world. A single major mine could pull 50 kilograms of silver out of the ground every single day. The ancient equivalent of printing your own millions. Every day. That silver paid for Carthaginian fleets. It paid for mercenary armies recruited from Spain, Gaul, and North Africa. It paid the war indemnity Rome demanded after beating Carthage in their first war. Spain was not just territory. Spain was the engine that kept everything else running. By 237 BC, the year this story begins, Carthage controlled the fertile farmland of North Africa around Carthage itself, the Balearic Islands, a Spanish island chain in the western Mediterranean, and the island of Malta. Sicily was gone, lost to Rome 6 years earlier after 23 years of war. Sardinia and Corsica had just been seized by Rome in a move so blatant even Roman historians called it theft. Southern Spain was coming under Carthaginian control. with Hamilcar Barca leading the campaign that would turn those silver mines into a war chest. Carthage in 237 BC was a wounded empire that still had its teeth, and it had not forgotten what Rome had taken from it. Rome started as a city on 7 hills beside the Tiber River in central Italy. By 237 BC, it controlled most of the Italian peninsula through a combination of military force and alliance building that no other power in the region had managed. Rome marched its way to power. Where Carthage built harbors and set up markets, Rome built roads and legions. A Roman legion was a machine. 4,000 to 5,000 men trained to fight in coordinated formations, armed with a heavy javelin called a pilum. Its long iron shank designed to bend on impact so the enemy couldn't throw it back. Each legionary also carried a gladius, a short stabbing sword built for tight formation fighting, worn on the right hip. 6 legions could destroy almost anything the ancient Mediterranean world could put in front of them. Rome governed its growing empire through elected officials, with 2 consuls chosen every year to serve as co-commanders-in-chief. One consul could overrule the other. The Senate, Rome's council of senior aristocrats, held real power over strategy, money, and war. It was messy and political and occasionally catastrophic. It also produced a state that could lose battle after battle and keep raising new armies until it won. The First Punic War. Why the story starts where it does. Punic is the Latin word for Phoenician. When Rome called these the Punic Wars, it was reminding everyone that Carthage was a foreign city, built originally by Phoenicians on a continent Rome intended to control. The First Punic War ran from 264 BC to 241 BC. 23 years. It was fought mostly over Sicily, a large island off the southern tip of Italy, sitting in the middle of every trade route between the eastern and western Mediterranean. Whoever held Sicily held a knife at the throat of Mediterranean commerce. Rome won. Carthage lost Sicily, then Sardinia. Then Carthage had to pay a massive silver tribute to Rome on top of it. Hamilcar Barca, Hannibal's father, had fought Rome in Sicily for years. He was never beaten in the field. He surrendered only when Carthage's fleet was destroyed and the city had no money left to continue. He sailed home undefeated and watched the politicians give away everything his army had bled for. He never forgot it. He never forgave it. 9 years later, he stood at an altar with his 9-year-old son beside him and passed that fury down the only way a man like Hamilcar knew how, with an oath. That oath is where this story begins. Hannibal took that oath and changed the world. Hannibal's story doesn't end here. Hannibal, Alexander the Great, and Genghis Khan. True history that reads like a thriller, illustrated on every single page. Find all 3 on Amazon and subscribe for a new chapter every week.